All right, let's get into this major scale exercises stuff. Obviously, there's going to be two distinct sort of practice sessions. And this is the point with respect to this video is to prove that there is two different ways of using the major scale to actually practice. One is using the modes. Obviously, we're just using the major modes. Later on, you can expand out using the melodic minor, using the harmonic minor. But we're going to talk about some of the inherent sort of things to pay attention to when you're practicing scales over like static chord vamps, which you should be doing. And then, of course, incorporating those ideas into your wider jams when you're actually jamming music. That way you can start looking for more interesting arrangements rather than just playing in the diatonic key all the time. Okay, so that's what that's going to break up. And the other one is with respect to just playing some simple melodies, but stringing chords together using the diatonic scale. So obviously that's an important one. That's probably the most important one. So just being able to strum some chords and play some simple melodies and string it all together, like you'll hear in the example, is the gold standard, if you will. So no more yip yapping. Let's get into this. All right, before we can get into the example, we got to look at this diatonic scale stuff a little bit more deeply. So here's the basic information. Obviously, you have the step pattern, you have the scale degrees, you have the note names, and you have the modal names based around where you're starting the scale. So if I start off the third degree, it's the Phrygian mode, right? If I start off the fifth degree, it's Mixolydian. Start off the first degree, Ionian or the major scale. 6 is Aeolian or the minor scale. Either or is fine. But of course, when you start using scale degrees, you can kind of eliminate the name altogether. You can just be like, play at the 6th degree. So it's implied that you're going to play in Aeolian. But I'll leave it up to you to do whichever one you feel is easiest for you to remember. So once you get this basic information down, then you can start to translate it to the fretboard. So you can see here's the G major scale, again, with the most basic elements, the step pattern, the note names, and the scale degrees now, instead of just having the modal names laid out on the low E string. And from there, I can use that now to flesh out all of the various positions. So if I take the first degree here, I have 3 notes per string, or this major arpeggio, or this minor 7 arpeggio. So I think you get the idea. I have all these choices, and of course I can also play a chord. In this case, the E-type chord. And so in the example, basically all I'm doing is taking an E-type chord like that, making it more fancy, in this case, a major 9, and then adding in some elements of the major scale, in this case, the Locrian mode. So once I do that, I get this very powerful sort of exercise. Now listen, there's no real exercise I can give you because I don't know what level you're at. So you have to kind of start on your own. But I will go through the sequence here. I start off with the major 9, and from there I move to the B minor 7. From B minor 7, I jump down to F sharp diminished. From F sharp diminished, I jump back up to G major 7. In this case, I'm basically moving up to the C-type position at the 10th fret on the A string. And then from there, I'm jumping down to E minor 7. And then I'm jumping down one more time to B7. That's a sneaky one that sets up C major 7. And then from the C major 7, I move up to D7. I'm back in the key of G major, of course. From there, I jump up to the Aeolian position, but now I'm going to substitute in diminished. That's a sneaky one. It's pretty cool sound. So diminished superimposed over the 6th degree. Yes, you heard that right. And then jumping up, of course, to the, again, Locrian position, I do more diminished. But when I do the scales, I actually play the appropriate scale degrees, right? So it always works out. The diminished part becomes resolved by me jumping into that little tiny scale fragment where I play like 2 or 3 notes. So that's the real magic there. And then, of course, I end up in G major 7 in the root position. Now, you saw the sort of the scale charts there. So there are variations. When I'm like G major 7, you could just play G major there and just add your own flavor to it, of course. But it's seeing the chord and the scale superimposed over each other at the same time. Not 2 separate elements, but both the same. And then, of course, using the diatonic scale to effectively map out the fretboard. And, of course, caged becomes your friend in that case. There it is. Let's get into the more scalar stuff. All right, with part 2 here, we're essentially going to maintain the scale system. So we're still going to play all the notes of G major and A Dorian and B Phrygian and so on and so forth. But what we're going to do now is basically the underlying chord. We're going to start changing that up. I'm going to still play the same notes, but the chord underneath it, I'm going to start messing with it based on the actual chord tonality based on the position, right? Dorian's going to be minor. Phrygian's going to be minor. Lydian and Mixolydian, they'll both be major or major and dominant 7. Then, of course, Aeolian would be minor. And then Locrian would be diminished. And so the point here is that I really want to sort of explore using these scale systems and arpeggios and whatnot over top of a static sort of vamp. Meaning the music itself doesn't change that much. So I can really dig in and be like, okay, that's what the major scale, the Ionian mode sounds like when you're just playing over the chord that it belongs with, right? Either the major triad or the major 7. And you hear me do both, right? There's a little sort of variation there just to give it a little bit more life. And you can hear me do that with everyone. I go from a minor 7 in the Dorian position to like, I think it's a minor 9. In the Phrygian, I do, again, another one where it's like another minor 7 to like a minor 7 flat 9. Again, I'm just borrowing more notes from the actual Phrygian position to flesh out the chord from a minor triad to a minor 7 to a minor 7 plus one of the extra notes that's already been altered. In this case, either the flattened 6 or the flattened 2nd, right? So it's either a flat 9 or a flat 13. That's how you see it in terms of a chord. So you know, I'm just going to keep it the Lydian major 7 raised 11, right? When I get into the 5th position, I'm going to do dominant 7. And then, of course, minor 7 for the 6th degree. And I use diminished for the 7th degree. So you can hear me do a bunch of different ideas in the actual sort of sections. And I'm going to kind of leave a little placard to sort of break down the most important information you need to take away. And then you can hear me do the improv. But I try to keep it relatively simple. You can hear me speeding up and slowing down. You can see me sneaking in little arpeggios. You can doing little scale fragments, mixing in the pentatonic scale and stuff like that, or scale systems based around the pentatonic scale, like the whole step pattern or the minor 3rd step pattern. You see me using 3 octaves principles. So all of those things are going on there. And that's what you have to be practicing at the same time as you're doing the scales. It's not just practice the scales. It's try to make it into a little solo. So listen, I left it quick and dirty so you get a real idea about, you know, just being like, okay, it's pretty close. I got to keep tweaking it, but it's pretty close. You keep working towards the gold standard, but it's expected that you're never really going to quite reach it. Just pick up the axe and instantly perform in the moment is no mean feat. So that's what we're always shooting for, and that's just it. When you start to train your ear to be able to hear like a diminished chord and then automatically switch to like a diminished type thinking, then you'll be like, okay, I have this really, really good tool available now. And then you listen to the next chord, you're like, oh, that's a minor chord. And so you do some sort of minor variant. And the more time you spend doing that, you keep focusing it down and down again. It's like you keep getting closer and closer by circling in on it. And of course, one day it's just second nature. And then whenever you hear a minor chord, you might play the Dorian mode, you might do a Phrygian idea, or you might do Aeolian. And that's just it. Right now, I'm just doing the one scale system so that you can actually hear the different flavors. And of course, you can always seek out these types of vamps on YouTube. There's major vamps, there's minor vamps, there's diminished vamps, meaning it's just one chord being played the whole time. And so you could sit there and practice it. I'm sure you can find vamps for like Lydian and stuff. Use the actual modal name, be looking for a Dorian vamp. Like, start to get interested in this stuff enough to start tracking down information. I have a whole folder in my YouTube account where it's just hundreds of different types of backing tracks where I can just go in there and start experimenting when I learn new stuff, but I don't want to, you know, break the bank or whatever it is. So that's part 2, is the idea that you're going to focus in a way right into the actual sound of the mode that you're using. So the Ionian has a specific sound. It paints a certain kind of color. And then, of course, Dorian's got a different sound. You're like, okay, that's kind of like a fusion-y thing. And then you'll be like, Phrygian's really dark. It's kind of disturbed, you know what I mean? You get a lot of diminished in there, half whole tone scale stuff. Lydian, it's like mysterious. Dominant 7, it's like, you know, funky blues. Aeolian, of course, the minor, tried and true. And Locrian, you hear me go crazy with diminished again, right? Really trying to focus in on enhancing diminished, and of course, a perfect opportunity to play and start to exercise the harmonic minor. So all of a sudden you're like diminished and the harmonic minor, those things go together like apples and pie, right? So that's enough of the chit chat. Watch the placard and then watch the video. And of course, sort of start to structure your own practice sessions using your own chord sequences, your own scale sequences, and your own arpeggio sequences. And if you don't know arpeggios, chords, or the scales, then you need to start to learn them and then put them together slowly into your own original configurations. This is the best way of learning because you maximize all your strengths and what you're interested in, and you get the win usually because you're like, I can dumb it down enough so that I can do it enough to get it up to speed and it sounds good, and then you just keep getting better from there. You can take it from me. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. Be prepared for total brutalization when it comes to the workout. This is kind of the friendly lesson, but trust me, these 2 things are highly overlooked, and these are some of the best exercises I ever started to take up. The idea of practicing directly over a chord to sort of see how the mode works, or how other modes work over top of it. And of course, the granddaddy of them all, which is just playing a chord, doing a little melody sequence, ending on a note, and then hopefully playing another chord, and then carrying on your idea. Now that's a lot more sort of in the jazz vein, but you can see that it has some pretty killer results. So I wish you all the best, and we'll see you in the next one.